Hey everyone, this is Lutz and welcome to a new episode of Linux Basics for Raspberry Pi. Today we're going to talk about permissions, groups and other things on a Raspberry Pi file system. So let's jump right in. In Linux you have three kinds of permissions. So the first one is for the owner or the creator of a file. The second one is for a specific user group, and the third one is for everyone else. And we can see this directly by using a command we learned last time. We list our files and our directories we have right now in our user home, and then we get our list where we have the overview of all files and permissions. And last time we talked about the files and the folders and how to create them. And this time we will talk about the permissions and the user groups. So the first thing you see here on the left is that here's let's looking a bit cryptical definition, and this is what we're gonna learn today. This gives you the permissions that are specifically set to a file or to a folder. It's always starting with a letter or with a line. The D for a letter is indicating that we are talking about a directory, and if we just have this line, then it's just giving you the information that it's a file. And afterwards coming a number of letters, and these are always grouped. You always have three groups for the different kind of permissions. So the first three letters give you the information of the permissions for the owner of the file. The second three gives you the information of the permissions for the group, and the last three give you the information of the permissions for all the others. Then this line here you can skip, we can talk at another time about it. And then comes the information for the owner for the file, and this here is the group. So what we can do with it now, I will show you in an example. I think that's the easiest way how we can work it out and make it understandable. So I will create a folder using the super user. I will just call it test. And then we can check what kind of permissions we have on the test folder. We see that it's a directory, and we see that the creator has all permissions, and the group has the read and the execute permissions, and all the other ones have also the read and the execute permissions. So we can test this out by typing ls test, and we see we can read it, we don't get an error prompt. So what we can do next with it is to change these permissions, and this is working by the command chmod. And then you give the permissions you want to add or you want to delete. So in that case we want to change the permissions for the others, because these are we, and we say others is the O, group is by G, U is the user, or all are all the others, or A are all user groups or all permission groups. So we just want to change O for others, and then we just want to take a permission off, so we type in a minus, and then we say we don't want to have read access to this directory anymore, and then we just add the directory name. And when we just repeat now the ls command, we will see that we don't have this write permissions here, which we had before. The read permission. If you want to change now more than one permission, it's maybe easier to use a command which is doing more changes in one time. So you can just use numbers which are indicating you the permissions. So if we see now that we have here these groups where we have our owner as first and the group as second and a third the other one, we can just type in 7 And 7 is a number which indicates that we have all permissions. And then we just say 0, 0 for indicating that all the others should have no permissions at all. And then we add it and we see that it's directly changing all the permissions for the test folder. So now only the root is able to change anything, and also the root group is not able to change anything. So it's just the permission is only going directly to the root. If you want to learn more about this command and how this works, you can for sure use the man command as we learned last time, and there you can get all the information you need. If you have special requests, you can find it here. If we want to check now if it's working, we can type in ls test and we will see that we don't have a permission for doing anything. So what can we do now? We can now change our permissions that we are able to read again, or we can just change our groups, and this is what we're going to do now. So the first thing when we talk about groups is the question of what kind of groups I am. So you just type in groups and then you get the answer for this is the number of groups where you're in. When you want to see what kind of groups are existing on your device, so you type in etc and then groups, and then you get all the list with all groups that are existing on your device. And at a Raspberry, that's really important to know. There are permission groups for the hardware itself. So for the SPI, I2C, GPIO, there are permission groups. If you want to run scripts on your device, you need to check that you have the permission to do it. Otherwise, if you're not in the permission group, you will get errors and it will take time to figure out that you don't have the permission, and that's really annoying. So check this if you want to do something with the hardware. Now you see that there's a bunch of groups already existing. We just will add now a new group because we want to make some play arounds with this group and we don't want to infect other things which are working on our Raspberry. So we type in sudo and then we type group add, and then the name I just use test because it's just the easy one for me. And then I will check again, and now I see that I have a group, but I don't have any user of this group. So we have now to add the user to the group. So we say sudo usermod add group, and then we add ourselves to the test group. So now we check again if we are inside of the group, and here we go, we are in. So what we did now is that we created a group and we add a user. So what we can also do now is to add another user. I had once a typo using a different kind of keyboard, and there's a second user existing which just has a typo inside. So I can use this for trying things. So I added this user now to my permission group, and I see that I have now 2 users inside. But I don't like to have a different kind of user inside that I don't need, so I will go to delete this user again, and you can do this by just kicking out and this group, and now it's not anymore in that group. So this is a permission, this is a command you need to type in if you want to delete permissions of your user. So it's sudo gpasswd -d username and then the group. So you can delete this permission again. So coming back to our list and to our folder. Now what we want to do is to change that one that we have our permission to read this. So right now when we type in test, we don't have the permissions. So what we can do now is to extend these permissions to have them available also for the user group, and then we will change our user group that we have the permissions to do it. So we just type in chmod, and because I'm lazy, I'm just using the numbers 770 because I just want to make sure that I have all permissions I need. And then I just type in test again, and I check if I'm correct with that what I did, and we see here now there are all permissions for the user group set. So what I do now is that I need to change the group. So there's two types how you can do it. You can use the change group command. This is what we will do now for changing the group. The second way how you can do it is to use the change owner command and set the group at the same command, but now we want just to change the group, and that's the reason why we use this change group command. And then we just say -c, that's used for the verbose mode, that you get the information that it works. And then you just type in your group name, and then you just type in your folder. It's now a bit confusing because the group has the same number than the folder. It's not a really practical example, but for understanding it should be okay. And now you get the feedback that the group was changed to test from the group root. We can check this again by typing in our useful command we use every time. So we see now that it's changed here from root to test, and before we had this root group set here. So now we can check if we have permissions to look inside, and now we see that the permissions are denied, and we just check why. And the reason is probably that I'm not part of the group. So yeah, that's coming from if I do an update of the group, I have to restart my Raspberry, so I will do it, and then I will come back and show you how it's worked. So after reboot we are back, and we can check if we're now part of the group. So we type in group, and we see that we are here part of this test group right now. So what we can do now is that we check again for our permissions, and we see that it's here part of this test group. So we check if we can read now the folder, and we see okay, we got access to it because we are part of this group. There's nothing inside, so the ls command is coming not back with any data. So what we can do now, as last point, we can change back these permissions, and then we will change the owner of the file. So we make a chmod and 700 to the test folder, and give it the sudo. And here we see that it's again back with the permissions only for the user. So we can just try it again, and we don't have the permission to do it. So what we do now is we change the owner, and this is with the change owner command. Then we need to add the user we want to have the permissions for. And here we can also, after the column, type the group we want to add this file. So in my case, I don't want to make any change, so I leave it empty. And afterwards, you just type in the folder where you want to change the permissions, the same as if we want to change the permissions of a file. So we've done it. Now we can check what's happening. And now we see that we are the owner of this directory. Now we can check again if what's inside of the folder, and we see we have the permission, so we can do whatever we want now because it's now our folder. So what did we learn in that video? We learned that there are 3 permission types you have inside of Linux. The first one is the owner or the creator of a file. The second one is the group, and the third one is all the other Unix that have permission to access to this file. So if you don't have the permission for a higher folder, you cannot have the permission for the file, but all that have permissions to access these files have the permissions which are listed there. So let's quickly go again through the comments we learned today. So what we did is we had the change mod where we can change the permissions of the files. So we can just use these numbers. I add in the description again the explanation how they works, and then we can just add with the O, the G, the U or the A for all, the specific type of that one we want to change, and then we can say add, or we can take the permission away, and then we have these things for read, write or execute, and then we can put the file name. So this is how we change the permissions of a file. And then we have all this group stuff, like getting the information what kind of group you're in, or we can just write out the groups that all exist inside of your Raspberry. So it's this command, and then we have our groupadd where we can add a user to a group. Oh no, the groupadd where we can add a new group to the Raspberry. And then we have the sudo where we have this usermod with the option AG for add group, and here we can now add a group to our user. And then we have this gpass where we can just remove some user from a list. And the last thing what we have is we have the owner and the groups which are related to this file. So we can use this change group command where we can just here change our user group. So this will be test in my case, and the file. And last but not least, we have the owner command where we add our user, and we can directly change the group. So just for maybe at the end, just for showing how it works, we just do it for the test directory. And yeah, if I would do it right, then it works. So that's always a problem at the end. If we want to quick show something, then you directly see that I've changed the owner and the group of the directory. So yeah, that was all for today. I hope it helps you by understanding how your Raspberry is working. More we will learn in the next video. So thank you for watching and see you next time. Goodbye.